hate to bother anyone. If anybody asks you, I'm not here. If anybody needs me, I don't care. But if you really want me, you know I'm with my kind. If anybody needs me, I'm not here. If anybody wants me, I'm not there. But if you really need me, you know I'm with my kind. With my kind.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I am your host, Bill, season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And it's finally here, the start of the 2026 season. The 2026 offseason has officially begun, folks. Super Bowl 60 couldn't have ended in more hilarious fashion. We actually did about 10, 15 minutes on it, including clips from WEEI over during our pre-recorded show. Make sure you go listen to that because Shaden Freud is the rock that it's the rock that the church of the Rockpile Report was built on. Was just being the pettiest, worst people in the room at all times, right?
Oh, yeah.
You go low, we take the subway. It never gets worse than us. And I will say that in the aftermath of the Patriots loss on Sunday, I was the worst version of myself. In a good way, I think, for us as Bills fans and content consumption community. I want to say something here. Real quick before we get into tonight's show, because there's a ton to unpack. We have a ton of actual football conversation to have. But I would be remiss if I didn't say this. You know, I sometimes wonder if I'm compelled to dress in Bills attire. I'm like, I don't have to deck myself out like a Christmas tree for the Buffalo Bills to come do a podcast. Because first of all, the number of people who download this on the audio side is so much bigger than the video side still. And it's one of those things where you don't know what I look like, so you don't care. But then the ones who do tune in, I feel like at first when we started doing this, I had to do it. Today was the first time I said, you know what? I'm just going to wear whatever it is I'm wearing around the house for the day when I'm working from home and I'm going to head off to my podcast. And my wife hit me with something. Now, I used to make fun of Chris because he cared about the way his hair was done. He cared about how he was dressed, what he was wearing. He would wear Chelsea boots to do a podcast where no one could see him. He would wax his hair doing an audio-only podcast. Today, my wife sees me. This is the first. I got this shirt for Christmas from my mother. And it's the first time. It's a quarter zip from Kohl's, I believe. And it's the first time I've ever worn it. So I put it on. It's really comfortable. It's fleece lined. It's warm and, all that good stuff. And then I walk by my wife and she looks at me and does a double take and goes, "Do you have shoulder pads on?" And I immediately took offense. I do what everybody does. If you attack me, I immediately attack you back. And I pushed back against it. And I was like, of course not. Why would I have shoulder pads on? That's the dumbest thing anyone's ever said. What am I, Hillary Clinton? And then I walked by the bathroom and saw myself in the mirror. Guys, I am your host this evening wearing shoulder pads, apparently. The cut of this thing is ridiculous, and now I just feel stupid.
Did that thing come from Marshalls or TJ Maxx?
It was a Kohl's buy.
Okay, usually TJ Maxx or Marshalls, they get the rejected items from department stores. I don't know how many different Bills coasters you have over there within shot of the side table or on the refrigerator, but like I have a set of coasters, Bills coasters from TJ Maxx. The thickness in one is like double the size of the other in the set. So TJ Maxx gets that. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't have been surprised if you said that came from TJ Maxx.
Also,
the way it's cut.
Didn't you say your mom used to wear shoulder pads back in the 90s?
Oh, yes. My mother was a linebacker for the phone company.
She worked in an office with shoulder pads on. Just out there, Terry Tate.
All women did that in the 80s. Anybody here that has a mom that worked in an office job in the 80s, they all had blazers with shoulder pads. They were all linebackers or safeties. Oh, Stacy, I really like that blazer you're wearing. Ooh, it's from the Steve Atwater line out of Denver.
The Steve Atwater line. I love the comments. Your wife isn't wrong. Also, it looks like a rejected Vrabel top. Tracy Brewster, Chris's hair is not as high. What's happening? This podcast is falling apart.
I haven't had a haircut in 8 weeks, which is nuts.
Oh, Tracy Brewster, I was in high school wearing shoulder pads. Oh, no. It really is funny, like, how I know this. I'm still going to wear this thing. I'm just not going to do it here. And now I have to try to get through this podcast without seeing my own thing on the YouTube while I'm looking for the comments and just being fascinated, drawn into the idea that I look like an extra from Murphy Brown. For those of you who don't get that joke, you're
too young.
You're too young. You'll never understand it. Guys, I want to get together and talk tonight about the off-season roadmap for the Buffalo Bills. They've got a lot of work ahead of them. You know, you can only, you fell short once again in the divisional round of the playoffs, but you watched a far inferior team to you make the NFL postseason and make the Super Bowl. And it just win your division. Like, you lost to a team that you know is worse than you in a lot of the places that matter. And yet at the end of the day, you would just sit here on the couch and watch them. There's a lot that this team has to do. And there's a lot that's going to change because of the new faces in the building, the shuffling at the coaching positions. And I say coaching positions because I think it's broader than just the head coach position that's going to dictate a lot about what changes with the 2026 Buffalo Bills from top down. Now that we're 2 days removed, 48 hours removed from the end of the Super Bowl, the league year's already started. Brandon Beane was on WGR last week talking about how they've been going 100 miles an hour for a week now. Between, okay, we get Jim Leonard in here. Now we're helping Jim Leonard and the pro scouting department are going through the current roster, talking about pros, cons, flaws, watching video of all the existing players to try to familiarize him so that he can tell Brandon Beane what it is he wants, what he needs, what his vision for this roster is. Talking to Joe Brady about, okay, now that you have the most, the second most say in the entire building of what we do from a free agent perspective, from a draft perspective, what do you need? Chris had that famous analogy years ago where Sean McDermott showed up here and tried to make cookies. And the Buffalo Bills had flour and chocolate chips and just handed those to him and said, okay, there you go, make cookies. You fast forward now, we've got many more of the ingredients, and yet at the same time, the recipe that Joe Brady may decide to use is not the one that Sean McDermott might refer back to. And they have to figure out what that looks like. What are the cap implications of some of the things that we want to do?
Joe Brady strikes me as an oatmeal raisin guy.
Really?
Yeah. Which is the GOAT cookie.
False. The best cookie is the molasses cookies. Molasses cookies with a little bit of the big grains of cubed sugar sprinkled over the top when they're still warm so that they don't melt, but it sticks.
We had somebody brought in crumble cookies today at work, and they put them in like the free section of the cafeteria. And then I walked past a coworker on my way back out the cafeteria. I'm like, they got cookies in there, and it clearly came from somebody who's trying to sweeten us up because they need our business. And he also looks like he doesn't have friends.
That's shocking coming from you, the most antisocial person I've ever known.
I mean, I'm at my limit with friends. You and my wife, and then anything after that, I'm full.
You're full. You don't have the bandwidth for it?
Yeah. I mean, Iman's close.
So I want to start tonight. It's a three-pronged off-season roadmap. Some of the biggest hurdles the Bills have to figure out between now and the start of free agency, and what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. And just talk about some of the decisions that the Bills have in front of them, what they have to figure out for themselves before they can try to read the tea leaves for the free agent market and make any bold choices that'll hopefully push the Bills to success. And the first and maybe most important is a total reassessment of the Buffalo Bills roster post getting all of the new coaches in place. New staff, new vision, new schematic directions, and hopefully better results, right? That's what we all want. New sets of eyes are going to be set on these players and the makeup of the roster. And considering, I don't know, the quality of the roster was something of an impasse between Bean and McDermott last season. And the fact that it got contentious. You had a head coach that at one point in the year was not on the same page with your GM on the fact of do we or do we not have a championship roster? And that's a problem. And you could put the blame on both doorsteps. You could say, hey, Josh Palmer is this. He's been this his entire career. Good for stretches, often injured, not the most reliable guy. You could also say, hey, maybe it's Sean McDermott's fault that I've given him draft pick after draft pick on defense, and they're not materializing in anything. At a certain point, it stops being the GM's fault, and it starts being the coach saying, hey, what are you doing with these guys? They start to feud publicly. You know that this isn't going to go anywhere well. So now you've got a GM and a coach who are going to try between the staff and him to get on the same page about what the grocery list is even going to look like, what they think of the existing talent, what they think about the talent that's out there on the market, what's out there to be had in the draft. There's a lot that has to change here. And I think that there's an underrated dynamic that Bills fans need to remember about Brandon Beane. His tenure here has been so long that I think people have forgotten the idea that he's not afraid to make bold roster decisions if he can find a dance partner.
Drew, I think you unintentionally paraphrased Descendants song from 1994. Comes from Barber in the comments.
What's that?
I
don't even know who the Descendants are. 1994. How old are you, Barber?
I mean, I was 10 when that came out. That was probably a couple months or maybe a year before I bought a Collective Soul CD.
Yes. Fun fact: my favorite, my very first CD purchase of all time, Top Gun soundtrack.
I mean, it's no secret mine is Live Throwing Copper.
So here's what I'll say. If you go back to 2017, a lot of people remember Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott coming in with a sledgehammer and tearing down Rex Ryan's roster, making a lot of bold choices to a degree that fans thought they were tanking. Fans everywhere were saying, hey, the Buffalo Bills are tanking because they're giving away Sammy Watkins. There goes Ron Darby. Those are the things people remember. And those trades gave us foundational things we needed to move forward. You trade away Sammy Watkins to the Rams, you get a second-round pick, and you also get E.J. Gaines, who came in and was a really good slot corner for you. He ended up being the second best defensive back on the roster that year, not named Trey White, or at least cornerback, not named Trey White. And you got a second-round pick out of the deal. Wonderful. You made the playoffs. And a lot of it was because you went out and got those pieces. You let Ron Darby go. And you go, okay, well, I don't like your attitude. Yeah, well, he didn't fit our scheme. And also, yeah, he had a shit attitude. Now, both of them went on to go play in Super Bowls. One of them has a Super Bowl ring. Do we care? Probably not. But look at some of the other moves that he made that underscores they're not afraid to get cutthroat, and that sunk cost means nothing to Brandon Beane. Jonathan Williams. He was a fifth-round pick in 2016, and he played 11 games, but he was buried on the depth chart behind a healthy LaShawn McCoy and Mike Gillislee. Remember when Mike Gillislee was a thing?
And we got mad he went to New England?
Well, yeah, the Patriots, we signed him to I think we tendered him, and the Patriots signed him, and then gave us the pick we used to get Matt Milano.
Correct.
Win. But either way, Jonathan Williams was on the roster, and everyone thought, okay, he's here. He's a fifth-round pick. He'll come in next year and pay dividends. Nope. They cut him halfway through the first preseason for no other reason than Sean McDermott said, I have no use for a depth player who doesn't play special teams. If you're a third stringer and you don't play special teams, you don't have a job here in Buffalo. And it defined some of what went on to be one of the key tenets of Sean McDermott's roster construction philosophy. But Beane said, hey, look, that might not be smart asset management, but I don't care. If that's what you want, I will make it happen. And he put Jonathan Williams on the street. Cardale Jones at quarterback, a fourth-round pick in 2016. Again, these are cost-controlled assets. They could have kept these guys for at least 3-4 more seasons. They chose not to. They identified Cardale Jones as a guy who they didn't think could read a defense. And because of that, they found a trade partner and gave him away for a conditional 7th-round pick that they never even ended up receiving. I think it's noteworthy. Another Ohio State quarterback. Another Ohio State. I'm great. This team is awesome. I almost took him to a national title quarterback. And look where they ended up.
Thomas in the comments wants you to have some Invisalign.
It's not going to happen, bud. Listen, Invisalign, I'll tell you this. Invisalign is a scam. Do you know that my teeth are so bad that they literally told me, hey, you could get orthodontia, but you're also going to have a surgery in order for the orthodontia to work. And I look at my life and I say, you know what? I'm married up. My wife is far more attractive than I am. It's not like I'm lacking in confidence. I wear these teeth like the red badge of honor. You're never going to make me feel bad about them. Now, I actually like it because it makes other people uncomfortable. Reggie Ragland. Reggie Ragland was a 2nd-round pick in 2016. Never saw a second season in a Buffalo Bills uniform. He did not fit Sean McDermott's archetype for linebackers. He was a heavy run-defending linebacker. Scraped really well, found holes in the run game, could plug and play, but he couldn't cover worth a damn. But that was never supposed to be his job. So as soon as they got here, they said, well, wait a minute, that guy has value. Yeah, he was a 2nd-round pick. Yeah, he was a collegiate national champion. We don't care. Get him out of here. He's taking up a roster spot. We traded him away to the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'll tell you what, look, we drafted Matt Milano, signed Ramon Humber, and then traded Reggie Ragland away all in the same offseason. And it wasn't like they thought like he wasn't an NFL starter. He started 10 games in 2017 and 15 in 2018 for a Chiefs team that won the AFC West in back-to-back years. Reggie Ragland was an NFL starter who the team drafted in the 2nd round and who could have been a cost-controlled asset for years. And they said, you know what? Brandon goes, okay, Sean, if you're dead set that this guy does not fit your mold, I'll find a home for him because that roster spot is more important. Simply being an NFL caliber talent that has a cost-controlled contract means nothing to Brandon Beane. When he's had this type of turnover before in his career, he has deferred to the coach. And if the coach says, I just don't like that guy. I don't like his fit. I don't like what he's doing here. I think we could do better. I think we could do cheaper. Brandon Beane has made the moves necessary to move the bodies because at the end of the day, you only have 53 spots. You don't have an unlimited number of roster spots for all of these players. And so with that in mind, keeping some guys who maybe aren't ideal, maybe are overpaid, maybe are long in the tooth and really not paying the proper dividends, it's a true detriment to the entire roster to keep them around now, especially with the way the cap keeps jumping. So with that said, there's some guys who are in legitimate danger of losing their spot this year. And the one I'll lead with is cornerback Teron Johnson. The contract extension or restructuring that he underwent this season made it a little more difficult to release him. He has an $11.5 million contract. But if he's cut before June 1, the Bills get $1.95 million in cap relief. If he's a post-June 1 cut, say during training camp, now the Bills get $8.7 million back to their cap. He's one of the best Bills players of the last decade. Don't get me wrong, but he isn't aging well. His best days are still NFL caliber, but Teron Johnson's worst days are terrible. Do you remember, Chris? I can never get this out of my head. He tackles Woody Marks, one of the NFL's smallest running backs, behind the line of scrimmage on 4th down and gets dragged for 5 yards for a first. I'm sorry, I can't have that. I can't have you on my team if you're that guy. And now you think about it. He's over the age of 30. You play a very physical brand of football, but that's also part of the reason that you're starting to accumulate injuries. You rack them up because you've always been a small player. You were just younger. Now you're starting to absorb injuries. You're missing time every single season. And also, we need high-level athleticism out of a lot of positions in Jim Leonard's scheme. Chris, a 31-year-old slot corner, I don't know if he's necessarily got the juice we're talking about.
No, Skid Valve in the comments said, no, he's washed. And there are some people in the comments that are bringing up Cooks.
Well, so we're going to talk about the wide receiver rebuild at the end of the show, so stick around because we've probably got about 25 minutes of discourse between now and then. Or leave, go wash the dog, have a beer, talk to your wife, and then come back in about 25 minutes. We're going to talk all about Brandon Cooks in the wide receiver room. Teron Johnson, right? The idea that if you wouldn't be excited if your first move is to maintain status quo with aging and expensive players, would it, Chris? And what's supposed to be a new defense, a new defensive coordinator coming in and going, hey, I know we need to be more explosive. We need to dictate more. The Bills just had their worst defensive season that they've had in 8 years.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that you would want to make some splashes at some positions that are key, that see a lot of run. Teams play nickel all the time now. Guys like Teron Johnson are hard to hide. And unfortunately, the amount of money the team can save, it's just too much. I feel like Teron Johnson's really on thin ice now. Curtis Samuel is one. And that's a no-brainer, right? $9.5 million cap hit. And if we cut him post-June 1, we get 7.8 of it back. There's no reason to believe anybody has any loyalty to Curtis Samuel. The Bills have already paid him too much money. Chris, Google it for me. How many games has Curtis Samuel played in the last 2 years? How many starts does he have?
Do you have a guess?
I'm going to say 8. I'm going to say probably 14 total games, maybe 8 starts. I can't imagine that Joe Brady would have any loyalty to a guy who hasn't been around long enough for him to have any game plans with.
6 games this past year, 14 in 2024. Started 2 in 24, none last year.
So he has 20 games in a Bills uniform. Joe Brady has no time on task with this guy because he's never around. Why wouldn't you do this? Like, I've got notes here, but who gives a shit about him? At the end of the day, Curtis Samuel is a guy who was signed to do a job and was never around to do it and just kept getting to cash the paychecks. I can't imagine an offensively minded head coach would have any sort of love for a player like that. Saying, hey, I really wish I could build my game plan around Curtis Samuel, but he's not here. He's riding pine again with another nagging injury. As a head coach now who's gotten 2 years of exposure to that, I have no illusions that Joe Brady didn't go to Brandon Beane and say, look, this Samuel guy, if we can save money by getting rid of him, get him out of here. Right?
Yeah. I mean, if I had to be, there's 2 ways of acquiring talent, the draft and free agency. I feel like I would rather take free agency, put that towards the defense, and the draft give me some offensive talent, please and thank you.
Well, we're going to talk about that in the upcoming weeks, but I can say this. Also, if you're Brandon Beane, you're getting $7.8 million worth of cap space back after June 1st. That's huge. That's the type of, that's the time of year. You know, think about this. Beane wanted to work out a trade at the trade deadline, but sounded like he wasn't willing to move that 2026 first-round draft pick as part of the deal for any of the available talent. That's why the Jalen Waddle trade broke down, allegedly. That he only wanted to give up the 2027 first-round pick. But if you wait until after the draft and start shopping your 2027 first, and maybe an asset, maybe an aging player, whatever it might be, because you've already tipped your hand and told people my 2027 round pick is open right now if you want it. And now you're telling me I can get another $7.8 million back to my cap in order to facilitate a trade like that? It's a no-brainer. Now I can do something significant during training camp, post-draft, for let's say Justin Jefferson doesn't get dealt during the draft. You can then turn around and go, all right, Minnesota, we're here now. Now that I'm here and I have the right mix of players that I can free up and get out of here to get my cap space by June 1st, now we can talk turkey. And also, since I already used my 2026 pick, here's the 2027 pick that I didn't care about giving away anyway. I think that he's a goner. And I think that Teron Johnson's probably in the same boat for exactly that reason. Now, on the flip side of that, Landon Jackson, recently drafted defensive end. Remember, I just got done telling you how many times the Bills drafted players, and then Brandon Beane showed up and said, "Nah, this guy, I don't care if he's on a cost-controlled contract. He doesn't fit here. We don't need him." Landon Jackson is this year's Reggie Ragland to me. $1.5 million salary. But if you give him a post-June 1st release, similar to cutting him out of training camp, let's say you let him show up, you let him see if his injury allows him to participate, and if not, you either put him on IR and then try to negotiate a release settlement, or you just cut him and eat the $1.14 million. It all comes out in the wash as to $360,000 difference. But that opens up a roster spot for you. I mean, think about what Landon Jackson is. Stiff and mechanical, coming off a catastrophic injury that's going to suppress any 2026 production. What
was his injury?
He tore his ACL.
Okay.
So he's going to have a very difficult time coming back this year and producing anything. He also is not a straightforward scheme fit for what you're bringing in. And I don't know, there's guys already on the roster like Javon Solomon who project to being a better fit for this scheme, who you're already paying to be here comparative to that guy. At the end of the day, I know he's a sophomore, but if he's not an archetype fit, he's not an athleticism fit, he's not a health fit, and he's not a player who's going to make any meaningful contribution in 2026. You can get $1.15 million, but it doesn't matter. You can get a roster spot back. One of your 53, 54 roster spots no longer has to be taken up by a guy who can't get on the field. I think Landon Jackson is a goner this offseason. It's, whoa, Sophie St. George, $9.99. Congrats on 1,000 subscribers. Thanks for the Top Shelf Bills content. God. Sophie, you're too kind.
Yeah. Joey from 4th and Inches is in the chat. Says I look like Roman from The Great Outdoors.
Yes. I love it. But this isn't all negativity because it's the NFL. Some people's loss is others' gain. I think there's some real opportunities to be found for some of the guys on this roster. First of all, Jordan Hancock. Jordan Hancock was a coverage guy, and yet it did not go well. It didn't go well for long stretches of the season. And now it's going to be interesting to see if Jim Leonard thinks that that's a byproduct of coaching or if he needs to also go because he's another Landon Jackson, where if they come in and they say, hey, look, I need more physicality out of my safeties. I don't care about your athleticism. I need a guy who's willing to come downhill because I already have a finesse safety, and his name is Cole Bishop. I already have a Cole Bishop who I'm going to have to pay at some point. What do I need? Another finesse guy who doesn't cover well. They could decide that Taylor Rapp, you're here, if only because you're still under contract. We're going to draft a rookie, and Jordan Hancock, you're the odd man out. Jordan Hancock is going to have OTAs, minicamp, and the early part of training camp to impress this team and show them that he deserves to have some kind of role here as a Buffalo Bill. I think one of the biggest is Dorian Williams. Justin Strnad is a player who I keep seeing people talk about. Like, oh, if the Bills, we've got Jim Leonard. If the Bills could just get Justin Strnad at linebacker, everything's going to be great because he's sideline to sideline, downhill run defender. He's super. You're talking about Dorian Williams if he was just allowed to just do that job. Dorian Williams is a very underrated linebacker. His athleticism is incredible. And at the same time, situationally, he's not without value. You have to find, in Sean McDermott's defense, you had to find a role and a timing for Dorian Williams. In a Jim Leonard defense, there's nothing saying Dorian Williams can't be a full-time starting linebacker for you. In fact, there's a world, Chris, where he might be a better full-time linebacker fit than Terrell Bernard. Just depending on what they do with the defensive line and what they want to dial up schematically, there's a world where Terrell Bernard is behind Dorian Williams on the depth chart because he lacks the size, the heft in the run game, and just the reliability, the durability. I don't know. If you could put him next to a guy like a Leo Chenal, a more athletic, not quite a Sam linebacker, but a heavy linebacker who could also play down near the line of scrimmage and pass rush. Sort of like how, what's his face? Who's the guy we called who was about to get in an RV and then played a playoff game with us?
Oh, Jordan Poyer?
No, the linebacker. We signed him, AJ Klein.
Oh, yeah, he was going on vacation.
He was literally about to leave on vacation.
I thought you were talking because Jordan Poyer got in a van and drove to Kansas City to play. That's what came into my mind.
If you could find me a better version of AJ Klein in his prime, a Leo Chenal type, then I could see a world where that linebacker and Dorian Williams are your starting linebackers, and Terrell Bernard kind of plays the passing down role. Which is crazy considering how much money they're giving him, but that's where we are. There's no loyalty in this, and I don't expect there to be any loyalty in the way that the Bills build this roster. They want to win, and they want to win now. They're not willing to wait. They're not willing to let guys learn. I mean, it would be tough to see that happen to a former team captain, but at the same time, I don't doubt that it's crossed at least a couple minds over there at the Brain Trust and One Bills Drive. What are you laughing about?
Joey in the comments, podcast suggestion, new host who doesn't look like John Oliver after an unfortunate accident.
This shirt's very unflattering. Also, you're very unflattering. What I do know, though, is you're a Dolphins fan, and you can't say anything to me. I've seen, to quote Rick and Morty, your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer. You horse's ass. And then I think the crown jewel in terms of players who will benefit from the competition for roster spots is Javon Solomon at the edge. He was always more athletically in the Jerry Hughes mold than the Greg Rousseau mold. And that always left him with a weird fit in Sean McDermott's 4-3 defense. This scheme change all of a sudden makes him this weird, like, Chris, it's like one of those things where you're behind. I'm trying to think of a movie like Labyrinth. Remember that movie?
I think that's Jessica's favorite movie.
David Bowie?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Everything's constantly shifting, whatever. Here's what I picture. Here's AJ Epinesa and Greg Rousseau going, we're the starting DNs of the Buffalo Bills. And then Jim Leonard shows up in the hallways shift, and all of a sudden it's Javon Solomon who actually has more upshot to playing the edge/outside linebacker role that Jim Leonard's schemes usually require. It's hilarious to me. And it's a significant opportunity for the kid entering his third year. He's costing you less than the long snapper, but could end up being a solid schematic fit as both a pass rusher, dropping into coverage in the flats, and also just being able to give you decent run defense when he's on the field. Javon Solomon actually stands to gain a lot through the attrition that will be the roster turnover that goes on here because of these scheme changes. And then they're also going to have to figure out what they can reasonably target and address in the draft versus free agency. Looking at the roster and going, hey, looking at it with clean eyes, what do we want to do? More than anything else, offensive line is number one with a bullet to me. Extending Osiris Torrance has to be one of the most important things that the Buffalo Bills do this offseason. He's their most durable player. Deion Dawkins missed a game. Spencer Brown missed games. Do you know who didn't miss any time and actually played more snaps than Josh Allen?
That's interesting.
Osiris Torrance. He's outperformed half the NFL's interior offensive linemen in terms of run block win rate, pass block win rate. Getting him done a year early allows you to price his extension into the structure of it, into coming years and the constant climbing of the NFL salary cap. Like this year, the cap's going to jump to like a reported 306 million. It could even be more than that. That gives you the ability to now restructure. Like this offseason, they're going to restructure Spencer Brown. Why? Because they can. They got his extension done early. They front loaded it with a bonus. And now they can just restructure the rest of it on down the line to open up cap space as far as they want to. They're going to do the same thing with Torrance, or at least they have to, if they're going to spend the next 3-4 years really going for it while still having the most competitive roster. Right?
Sure.
And you need run blockers considering you're probably going to lose Dawson Knox.
You're definitely losing Knox.
You're probably going to pick up the 5th-year option on Dalton Kincaid. And I say that, and somewhere out there, Eric Harris is in the cockpit of an airplane trying to stick his head out the window.
Right there at the top. It's a sad day that this Dawson Knox Seagram's bet that we've had his entire span in Buffalo
comes off the board.
Drew and I have had a Seagram's bet where if Dawson Knox was if he was the hero, Drew would drink a Seagram's. If he was a zero of the game, I would drink a Seagram's. It's a sad time. We're going to have to take that off the board.
I love this. Hang on. I can't. Wait, what's happening here? Thomas Bussey, I can't stand Sal Cappuccino. Dude talks too much. Someone said, agreed. What? Buffalo Plus? What's happening here in the comments?
I asked Thomas who his favorite content creator is because Thomas is new. And I was like, well, who do you like? Who's your favorite content creator? If they're local, we'll try to get him. And he was like, lately I've liked Jeremy White. I'm like, oh, he's a tough get because he doesn't really. I mean, we're doing this at night, and he's got a morning show, so sleeping takes precedence over doing this. And he doesn't do much outside of his radio show and Bill Squad with Joe Marino and Jerry Ostrowski. And then apparently he's not a fan of Joe Marino, which is wild. Everybody, I've never met or have seen somebody type, I don't like Joe Marino. He's probably the most likable dude in Bill's content creation. He attracts everyone.
Yeah, until he tweets out about the Carolina Panthers, our team, and I go, oh! And I almost have a Ross Tucker moment. But I won't slander the man.
Apparently Joey's going to take clips of our show and mute it and then dub over his own voice.
It'll be the best content of all time, Joey. I dare you.
He says over Drew's sweaty tirades.
Here's what I love. So you've got Osiris Torrance, who you have to do something with. Knowing what you're going to lose, you're going to keep Dalton Kincaid. You're going to. So now you kind of have to figure out how am I going to augment our run blocking, especially with no Dawson Knox. And then I look at Edwards and McGovern. Okay. Thanks to the success for the Bills over the last 2 seasons, especially James Cook's success, they're quietly the silver tuna of free agency right now. At each of their respective positions, they are projected to outpace everybody else in average annual value for their contracts. Now, because of their age, they're in differing years, differing terms, right? Because Connor McGovern's a little older. He's over the age of 30. He's probably looking at another 2-3 year deal. Some team could decide that David Edwards, all those concussions concerns, which is why Buffalo got him as cheap as we did, were overblown. And now we know he's durable and we know he's reliable and he plays at a high level. We're ready to make him one of the highest paid guards in football. That might change the way Buffalo feels about him. You know, think about it. If you had to prioritize between the two and keeping one of them, it's got to be the center, right? Connor McGovern's average annual value this past season was only on his last day was only $7.5 million a year. Giving him a bump into the $10-11 million range wouldn't be crazy because he's going to be 30. Like, he's not ancient. 30 isn't old for a center. But if he's looking at the market going, I think I can go out there and get Drew Dahlman and Cam Jurgens money. We're talking like $17 million a year. That's where this gets dicey. And there are teams. Think about the Raiders. The Raiders are going to draft a quarterback with their first pick. What do they have? What do they have in the offensive line?
Oh, they don't have anything.
So they're going to spend a lot of money to try to shore that up before they put a rookie behind it. Also, if you're the New England Patriots and you just watched your quarterback get his head kicked in during a Super, my favorite has been all the memes about Drake May. And they're like, every time Drake May drops back to pass, and it's just somebody getting like Big Papa Pump, just hitting some guy with a pipe when he walks out of the door. It's very funny to see how many teams have a ton of money and need to protect their quarterback. I have no doubt there will be a giant market for guys like Connor McGovern. And so now you have to look at it if you're the Bills and say, okay, how do I square this? My pipeline's not dry, but do I want to retain a guy like this? Does the tape tell me and my new head coach, Joe Brady, that I can't live without a center? Never mind guard. I can't live without this guy as my starting center. Because you've got guys on the roster, right, who could fill in at guard. Alec Anderson. He had some really questionable snaps at center last year. I remember one of them in that. Remember the Broncos game? He just like rolled the ball, or was it the Jaguars game when he came in and just rolled the ball to Josh Allen across the ground? But I could see Alec Anderson resuming his jumbo roll packages if David Edwards stays, but also taking that job outright if he leaves. Meanwhile, you look at the center talent is hard to find in the NFL. Consistent center talent is difficult to come by. And then you look at why we're blessed to be able to spend some of the money we can on the offensive line. It's because our pipeline isn't, I mean, you've got Alec Anderson that you can tuck into the interior, right? But behind them, you've also got guys that Cedric Van Prangranger, who you can make your backup and then draft a cheap guy on day 2, day 3 to say, hey, backfill some of these things. Or you go draft a guard on day 2. I like to look at our position comparative to the Chiefs. You know, that's what we do. We've been competing with the Chiefs for forever. The Chiefs were paying Juwan Taylor at right tackle, drafted a left tackle in the first round, had former third-round pick Wanya Morris for $1.3 million, and then paid over $10 million for a free agent tackle in Jalen Moore, who was basically just a swing tackle and just an insurance policy. The Bills have the luxury of not having to do that. We have 2 tackles getting paid and 2 high-level starters, and then our swing tackles are locked down for less than $3 million a year. You know, Ryan Vandermark's an RFA. He's going to get tendered. And Tylen Grable will be on the roster for $1 million. The interior offensive line is far more important than a lot of what else is going to go on in offense. And I wouldn't be surprised to watch the Bills act pretty decisively to figure out we're either going to shore this up or we're going to backfill with an Alec Anderson at guard. We're going to bring back a Connor McGovern, regardless of whether he wants that $15 million a year, and we'll figure it out. I'm fascinated by how this coaching change changes the way they spend their money. Remember the years, Chris, when we made our first AFC title game against the Chiefs, and we had Ryan Bates and like some other idiot journeyman at guard?
Somebody will tell us in the chat.
And the whole thing just got blown up. We died. We died a slow, not even a slow death, a fast death. The whole offensive line just imploded. It was crazy. Darrell Williams looked terrible. Everything was awful. Everything they touched that year was crap. The second, we're 44 minutes into this podcast. We're only getting to the second point. Pro scouting the 2026 pass rushers. This is going to be a giant piece of the Bills' 2026 offseason. Because the NFL draft can give you a lot of stuff, but for a team that wants to win now, kind of has to win now. The draft just is not the best case scenario. I want to walk you through a couple of years of draft history when it comes to edge players. In 2021, not a single first-round edge talent was one that you would look at as a game-changing player. Rousseau, Kwity Paye, Peyton Turner, Justin Tryon, Odafe Oweh. None of these guys. Odafe Oweh is being talked about as one of the best free agent pass rushers this year, and it's only because he went to the Chargers with a real defensive head coach. And the whole thing just, I don't know. All of this is crazy. Think about that, Chris. A whole draft class where almost nobody was useful.
I'd put it to the chat here. There's a Bills content creator that did not like, was on the show, did not like Greg Rousseau as an option to be a pass rusher. I wonder if anybody in the chat will be able to.
I still remember who it was.
Yeah,
I remember who
it was. They did not like and it was a wild time because it was COVID and people could opt out, and Greg Rousseau opted out from playing another year at Miami, and then came to the draft and had one good year of production and a year off, and then you're in the draft, and we ended up taking him.
So you look at that. Can we talk about who it was?
I mean,
has anyone in the comments nailed it?
No.
It was Bruce Nolan.
No, it was definitely, it was Bruce Nolan.
Bruce Nolan was like, I can't.
It's not Prohaska.
He's like, I can't stand the idea of Greg Rousseau. So your king, you as a content community have pushed this guy up past the likes of Tony Kornheiser. You guys, yeah, that's the guy who didn't like some Greg Rousseau. 2022, it didn't get any better. Top of the class was decent because they had, Trevon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson, 1 and 2. But think about this, from pick number 2, Aiden Hutchinson, and pick number 105, end of the third round, only one player drafted at the edge position, whether they're an outside linebacker or a 4-3 defensive end, has had back-to-back seasons of double-digit sacks. Do you know who it is? Nick Bonito. Most recently coached by our now defensive coordinator, Jim Leonard. So do you think like maybe he realizes that it's hard to go find a guy like this when I already have a Jonathan Cooper doing the same thing on the other side, who I also took on day 2 of the draft? It's a weird, oh boy. It's a weird thing. Hang on. My computer's malfunctioning. There we go. We're good. The rest of the class never came close, even including George Karlaftis. George Karlaftis is a player who gets lauded by Kansas City fans, and he was great when Chris Jones was great. When Chris Jones started to look old, George Karlaftis disappeared. And that's where I think Greg Rousseau lives. Greg Rousseau is the type of player who is George Karlaftis. It's just, you exist and you're remarkable as long as there's somebody special around you. The second that's gone, you don't mean anything. He had flashes of that when Von Miller was here. 2023, Byron Young. Byron Young of the Chris, how crazy is this? There were 2 players named Byron Young drafted in the same class. Ooh. Same name, both to teams whose initials are LVR or start with an L. The Las Vegas Raiders and the LA Rams both drafted a Byron Young. The Rams version of it was the only impactful edge player taken in the top 90 picks from the 2023 class. And so when you look at that dynamic and you go, look, how many teams are drafting players and getting no return? They're getting 0 return. The Buffalo Bills just spent a 3rd-round pick on Landon Jackson, and we got no return for our investment. If you're a team that needs to win now, and you're also having a complete overhaul of your scheme, I'm sorry, but you're going to overhaul your archetype, and you're also going to change your approach. McDermott utilized big physical DNs that weren't bendy. They didn't need to be. You needed to be physical. You needed to be able to set an edge against the run and crush a pocket, not rush around it. The aggressiveness and the positional flexibility and the coverage flexibility that Jim Leonhard wants in his defense, you have to get more athletic. They're not going to be running a straightaway 3-4 defense, but it doesn't matter because you still have to be able to have athletes in space at the edge position. That actually opens the Bills' options up. Nothing more. It's going to make the run up to free agency and the draft more exciting and gives us more options to work with. Because I think about this. Obviously, the trade market. Chris, right now, if you look at the free agent market, look who's out there.
For what position?
Defensive end. Go look at edge players out there on the market. It's terrible. It's a terrible market. And you look at some of the biggest names. You know, it's Joey Bosa again. We all saw what that looked like. He had 5 sacks. And everyone's going, oh, well, he played 17 games. Good for him. I don't want a charity case on my roster. And I guarantee you a new coaching staff who's not defensive-minded at the top thinks the same way. They don't want to invest a ton of money in a guy who you're hoping, fingers crossed, can survive an NFL season, get to the playoffs and be healthy, right?
Yep. So, Drew, you see up here on the screen here, we have the top 3 listed per Spotrac. Trey Hendrickson, Khalil Mack, Hassan Reddick. Now, if you go down,
Khalil Mack might retire.
You go down the list, a couple players, this is a guy I would sign, Yetur Gross-Matos is on the list. That was a Drew Gear darling a few years ago.
I loved him. Do you know what he did last year?
Nothing.
I'm looking at his PFF stats right now. He had 13 total pressures and no sacks this season for San Francisco, a team that had nothing but opportunity. A team with nothing but opportunity in front of him because everybody was hurt and he still couldn't get on the field. Look at who else is out there. Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd, guys. Remember when he had 10 sacks for the Bills and no one remembers him? Yeah, that Leonard Floyd. What about Joe Tryon-Shoyinka? He's back. Oh, good. Greg Rousseau got a contract extension. He didn't. And guess what? He's useless. He gave the Bears less than nothing for the contract that they signed him to. Also, like, you just go down this list and you go, okay, Jesus Christ. Now, you're going to have to get creative. I think that the problem for the Bills when it comes to pass rush, something we all know has to improve. Watching the Super Bowl, you have to have pass rushers. But then you look at Nkenu Nwosu. He has that pick 6, and he has some pressures. I think he had a half sack aside from that. He was a journeyman. He spent his whole career bouncing around to different teams, and he landed on the Seahawks, and then he was not great. He was average for the Seahawks, and then had a really great postseason and a great Super Bowl. I can think of a bunch of guys who fit that mold. And so, well, it's easy to sit here and pound the table for a Max Crosby trade, which I don't think is outside the realm of possibilities, considering all the cap space the Bills can open up. I think that you need to take a blended approach to this. You need to look at free agency, look at the trade market, and also look at what you can get on the cheap. You know who I think about when I think about this, Chris? I think about, what's his face there? Lorenzo Alexander.
Lorax.
The Lorax. I love Lorenzo Alexander because when you signed him, he was a veteran unrestricted free agent who didn't, like, seemingly it was a weird fit. You go, oh, he's always been a D lineman, hand in the dirt. Now you're going to make him a stand-up linebacker. That's weird. You're asking him to do a thing. Okay. But then he showed up here and pushed Manny Lawson off the roster. Manny Lawson, who I will never forget, Bills Jets. It was the game that we won to stop the Jets from going to the playoffs. And Manny Lawson is streaking with a slot receiver down the seam in coverage. And I go, wait a minute. Somehow Lorenzo Alexander is so good that they don't need a Manny Lawson? That's crazy to me. This guy better rule. Chris, what did he do? He went to the Pro Bowl, won the Pro Bowl MVP, and won a truck. And then went on to be a mainstay of the Buffalo Bills, not just as a culture guy in the locker room, but also as a performer on the field. sacks, tackles for loss, just commanding the line of scrimmage because he had a little bit of a positional switch and a little bit of a scheme change. This franchise is going to have to try to get creative and identify guys who, sure, in a perfect world, you either go out there and you swing for the fences in free agency with a deal for a Trey Hendrickson, or you go out there and you hammer out a trade for a Max Crosby, and you can put your hands up and go, well, my job here's done. I've figured out where my pressure is going to come from, and now I'll let the guys who the Greg Rousseaus and the Jonathan Solomons of the world figure it out. But otherwise, you have to take a blended approach to how you're going to build this. And I think that it's going to favor trades in the free agency market because the draft isn't going to give you a ton at the top. There's no benefit to putting more draft capital into pass rushers at the top of this class, even though this draft class is being talked about as being really great for long-term pass rush success. I still think that you're not at the place where you can go BPA in the draft. You want to win right now. You want to go win a Super Bowl in 2026. Well, then you got to go somewhere else with that pick. I think they have to look for a trade, or they have to look at the free agent market, maybe both. David Ojabo is a name that jumps out to me. In free agency, if you wanted to take a cheap flyer contract, hey, here's a guy who was a stud in college, but could never seem to get right, and he couldn't find a fit in the scheme in Baltimore. Maybe he fits here, and you could pay him $2 million a year to be here on the Bills roster on a one-year deal. You could do a lot worse than having options. And I just think that this is where the pro scouting is going to pay more dividends and keeping, I'm the guy who famously said that we should have let both Bean and McDermott go at the same time. I said I wanted them gone. I wanted them gone together. That was my worst case scenario, that we would keep either one without the other. Well, I guess one of the benefits is he knows how to make trades. This guy has worked the phones. He understands it. Unlike Kevin, unlike Kevin Adams in the NHL, this guy knows how to make an NFL trade. He also understands how to go fishing for value. I think that that's where the Bills are going to find their value for the defensive end and pass rush position. And it's going to take a lot of networking at the combine. It's going to take a lot of work, behind the scenes. It's scary to me because I can't watch another toothless Bills defense go out there. I need to see a Bills defense that can get sacks, because the most successful versions of the Bills I've ever seen, the only Super Bowl versions of the Bills I've ever seen, is when they had a ferocious pass rusher. That's it. That's all I know. And they looked like they were on pace for it when they had a healthy Von Miller. So you, as a Bills franchise, have to go out there and find that. And if you can't find it out of free agency, if you can't go out there and spend to get it, then you're going to have to trade for it. And whatever that costs, you have to navigate as a GM, but that's why you get paid. And then there's the third position that's attracted the... What are you doing?
I'm trying to do something for the end of the show.
Of course. Third thing, getting the most attention, it's the wide receiver room remodel. All of you people putting Brandon Cooks in the comments earlier, I hope you're still here. Gather around, children. Gather around the fire. We're going to talk. Brandon Beane acknowledged while he was joking around with the guys on WGR just this past week. This is something the team needs to find answers to. And he acknowledges that they missed on a lot of things building out the skill positions. I want to say that in retrospect, letting Mac Hollins walk was a major mistake for the Buffalo Bills. He had 550 yards and 2 touchdowns for New England after missing, I think he was on the IR to start the playoffs. Do you know that no Bills wide receiver in 2025 outperformed Mac Hollins on the Buffalo Bills in 2024, except Shakir? And most of that was yards after the catch on passes behind the line of scrimmage. That's pathetic. Mac Hollins averages the same 12, 13 yards a catch every season that guys like Josh Palmer do. He's tougher. He's more durable. I don't know why they made the decision to move away from a guy like Mac Hollins and fixate on Palmer. I don't understand it, other than maybe they only saw Mac Hollins as a slot player, which, again, I don't get it. What I do know is that this year's wide receiver market is very similar to the defensive end market in terms of the free agency pool being somewhat underwhelming. So trades are probably going to have a bigger impact than pure UFA dollars being spent and being able to go buy the guy of your dreams. But you're not just one move away from having your wide receiver room figured out. Like, this is the room, Chris, right now, as of today. Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Terrell Shavers, Curtis Samuel. That's it. You have 5 guys. You have 5 guys heading into training camp right now. Gabe Davis, unrestricted free agent, coming off an ACL tear.
He's not playing.
Brandon Cooks, unrestricted free agent, who's already said he wants to be back. I wonder if he can be negotiated. Now, your 2 most routinely impactful wide receivers down the stretch are both free agents, and one of them, I mean, Gabe Davis might join the practice squad late in the Bills season. That's the only job I see for Gabe Davis in 2026. Brandon Cooks is interesting because he was the downfield threat for the Bills the second he showed up. So they have a vested interest in bringing him back. It just has to happen at a number that makes sense. And I wonder, Chris, can you look up what his career earnings were? You want to go ahead and give that a Goog for me? Brandon Cooks' career earnings. Because during our pre-record show, you made a comment about one of the players that we were discussing. And you said, oh, look, he's made X amount of dollars over the course of his life.
Joey Bosa.
You mean to tell me he couldn't take a little less just to go win a ring for the first time in his career?
Yeah.
How much has Brandon Cooks made?
We'll round up to $125 million.
So you're a wide receiver who's made $125 million, but you have never attended a conference championship game in your life. I think the Bills game with us was the first time he had ever played in a divisional round game. Brandon Cooks has a vested interest, if he cares about legacy and coming back and making a workable deal with the Bills that makes sense. And that's great, but he can't be the only thing you do. You can't just have an unrestricted free agent. And when you look at the market, something we'll talk about in the next couple of weeks in the run up to free agency, that wide receiver market is fucking crazy. You're talking about what, Diami Brown? Oh, I'm sorry, Diami Brown. What have you done? But somehow you're out here as one of the biggest names? It's crazy how shallow the talent pool is there. Also, you factor in a Samuel release. Now you maybe need 3 bodies to make your 5 to 6 game day wide receiver room. Palmer, he's safe, low cost, lack of cap benefit from cutting him. He will be back. Shakir's the only guy with a pulse. Shavers is a fan favorite because he played his ass off. He played his way into being relevant and then tore his ACL when he was literally tore his ACL and then got back out there on the field. That's a dog. I want that guy in my franchise. I want that guy on my roster every week. But he's what at best, your wide receiver 4? Keon Coleman, one of the most polarizing players you have, had a great end to the season. In the playoffs, yeah, he had that one crazy bounce pass volleyball catch in the end zone. But Keon Coleman showed up in the postseason. And he's a guy who Josh Allen went out of his way in that press conference he gave after the head coach was hired. He talked about how he's got my vote of confidence. It's going to be me. It's going to be me. It's going to be Keon working all offseason to try to get on the same page, to try to figure this out, make it work. And Coleman has skill. You just got to tap it. You got to figure out how to get to him. Maybe with a new regime and a new coaching staff, you can do that. That staff never developed a wide receiver. Not once. There are 0 developed wide receivers. Khalil Shakir is still today the same receiver he was in college. We're just lucky he fell to us because nobody else valued what he did. Do you remember Brett Coleman, Chris, in the video he made? He called Khalil Shakir the secret weapon.
Yeah,
he was like, some team's going to get a pick in the 4th, 5th round out of this
Brett
guy.
Coleman did a video on a 5th round pick, and then this is back when he tied cocktails to his videos. He tabbed me, not you, for a Buffalo themed cocktail. So you can see, like, the summer of Khalil's draft, Brett Coleman put out like a 15-minute video on why this guy was such a steal in the draft.
And so with that, you have a bunch of guys who can be really useful, but they're all Z receivers at best. I need an X. If I'm going to be a Super Bowl team, I need an X receiver. Look at the Seahawks. They had Jackson Smith and Jigba. They had their X sorted out. And if you don't have one, the odds of you making the Super Bowl are really slim. The last team to do it without an X receiver was the Kansas City Chiefs, and they got the brakes beaten off of them by the Eagles. It's just like the edge position where the draft is not kind to rookie wide receivers. So if you're looking for immediate impact, knowing how steep the learning curve is for these young kids coming in, you're probably looking at a combination of trades and also low cost, high upside UFA signings. And then you're probably looking at maybe even day 2, day 3 draft picks thrown at this problem. I would argue that that's one of the more important dynamics here. How many times, Chris, I want you to go right now, look up Buffalo Bills draft history and look for the Pro Football Reference breakdown of it because it's the most concise version of it. I saved this for you. I didn't show it to you in the notes. I didn't talk to you about it. There it is. Bills all-time draft history. Now, how many wide receivers have we taken in the top 3 rounds? Top 3 rounds.
Keon Coleman.
He's already back to 2020, folks. The idea is it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen for the Buffalo Bills. They have not done it. How much of that is a byproduct of 1, you lucked out on your quarterback, and 2, you have a defensive head coach? Now that you have an offensive head coach, this is a team that can get in there and maybe make some moves when the draft comes around to say, look, last year we invested all of our first day, second day, almost all of our third day picks in defense. And then we jokingly made a 7th round draft pick at wide receiver. It's time that the offense finally got its due in the draft. I'm certain they can go out there and identify some 2nd round talent. But at the same time, this is also, as we're going to talk about in the run up to the draft, we're going to talk about it in the free agency preview. This is one of the weakest draft classes for the wide receiver position. And so,
how are we going to do that episode with Nate Geary and Mark Schofield?
Oh,
if it's that bad.
Well, we're going to make fun of both of them for, at that point, I'm sure WGR would be bankrupt. They won't have jobs. You can just be like, hey, idiots, you both work for outlets that don't exist. Chris and I both have real jobs, and we do this for fun.
Yeah. So
it's mean. I shouldn't say
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of you guys pay attention to it, but I mean, I'm sure you saw the press release that the Bills are taking control of One Bills Live and games straight to their app, and they're not using GR. So WGR is going to have a 12-3 time slot wide open. I mean, I guess I'll text Nate for the email of his boss, and I'll just link him to this episode and this clip. Hey, we heard you guys need an afternoon show. I know your budget says we can pay whatever New York State minimum wage is, but we might take a little bit more. We take this show to radio. We would walk in there like Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly doing interviews.
We show up in tuxedos and just go, hey, listen, we're here doing the interview. You all shut up. We're important, not you. Chris, what were you working on over there, production-wise?
Okay, we're closing the show.
Hey, well, the reason I'm asking is because here's what I want to say. I think that Bean is obligated to take this wide receiver rebuild seriously and focus significant attention on it this offseason. The problem is Bean kept his job despite showing his ass last year. He berates the local radio hosts and gets national attention. And that was funny right up until it wasn't. And we saw the way they were playing on the field. And now you realize, like, oh, man, he should have done that differently. He's now got to go out there and do a lot of work to rebuild that. And I don't know how you do that in a single offseason. Rebuild something you neglected so badly. I get it. You maybe I want to hope in my heart of hearts that you were feeding off, hey, this is Sean McDermott's last hurrah. And you knew that you were kind of positioned against him behind the scenes. And you said, look, man, if you want all the defensive draft picks, I'll give you all of them to try to save your job. Otherwise, your ass out. And it still blew up in his face. I guarantee you Joe Brady's going to want offense. He's going to want pieces to work with, right?
Yes.
He's not going to want to give up the whole draft class to what? Defer to his defensive coordinator? People go, oh, it's going to be weird. It's a new scheme. We got to draft new players. I guarantee you the new head coach is going to have a significant amount of say in who we pick. I think it's going to be hard. Remaking this wide receiver room is going to be the hardest thing Brandon Beane does this offseason. It's going to take maybe trades. I've already seen people talking about the fact that we hired the wide receiver coach from Arizona being like, oh, they're going to trade for Marvin Harrison Jr. Would that move the needle for anybody? That seems unserious to me. What are you going to give him a 3rd-round pick for him? Because otherwise, you give up any more than that, I'll scream. Guys, I don't know. I want to know, first of all, I want to know what you guys think about the wide receiver room and how much of it has to be by trade or how much of it how happy would you be if they went out and spent $18 million a year on a 30-year-old Deebo Samuel? Does it really change what the Bills are? I don't think it does. And also, I need to know what the hell you were working on from a production standpoint.
Oh, okay. Well, so earlier in the show, everybody was, I guess it was Joey.
Wait, who said he's allowed to say what he feels?
Oh, I was talking about Nate Geary. Thomas in the comments called Nate Geary average. And I'm like, well, you should see him on our show because he's not behind a WGR microphone. He can say what he feels.
I love that Nate came on our podcast and talked about it being called a cuck within the first couple of minutes of his radio show after the one game that the Bills won. He goes, this guy was so excited. He literally called in the first 5 seconds, called me a cuck. He goes, it just took me totally off guard. I pity everybody who has to do those post-game shows. Chris, hit me with it.
So I believe Anthony Simonelli in the comments is who you think it would be based on last name.
What?
Yeah. Because we got a text message. Don't look at it because I improved it. But earlier in the show, I got called that I look like Dan Aykroyd from Great Outdoors. So there you go. It's me and Dan Aykroyd.
Oh my God!
The only thing I'm missing is the what is that called? Widow's Peak. Is that what that is? Where you're receding your hairline on the edges of your forehead. I think that's the only thing that I'm. It's the only thing that I'm missing.
Hey, don't worry, it'll come.
I don't think I'll get it. I'm 41, and my hairline is not receding at all.
And here's what I'll say about Thomas. Thomas is still in there in the comments. And Thomas, you're not wrong. Bulldog Shope, mindless entertainment in the afternoon. I'll say this. Bulldog is one of I think the most genuine people I've ever heard do radio. I think that Chris Parker is a phenomenal drive time afternoon radio host. He knows how to mix anecdotes about his life into the show. He talks about sports. He talks about his personal foibles. He finds a way to make light of everything. I think Shope is the thing killing that show. I think that most people who listen to sports radio in the Buffalo market are willing to say that Mike Shope might be the worst thing happening to Afternoon Drive. And it's because he sounds bored and he just sounds disinterested. And he's got all the hallmarks of a guy who he's doing a thing, but he wishes he was somewhere else. And I know this because he always says this. He goes, "Oh, have you ever heard me on the fantasy football hour over here or over there or doing this thing and that thing?" And when you go listen to those shows, it turns out there's a whole different Mike Shope that people in the Buffalo market don't get. We don't get Mike Shope at his best anymore. The Mike Shope that we get here in the Buffalo market is the I'm burnt out and I'm tired Mike Shope. It's I have to do this because it's my day job, but at night I get to go out and do the cool thing. You know, one of my favorite songs by one of my favorite songs of all time, to be honest. It's my celebration song. Whenever anything good in life happens to me, Deacon Blues by Steely Dan is my like personal anthem. And I picture Mike Shope like that guy, the protagonist from the song Deacon Blues. He's a guy who he's got a 9-to-5 that he just doesn't. He's like, okay, I exist and that's fine. But also I get to go out at night and freelance and do this crazy shit. And I wish I could make my life that. And that is why he sounds the way he sounds on the radio. It's why Afternoon Drive suffers. And it's why you hope it's mindless entertainment, because to really try to get information from it, the way they treat callers, it's not good. It just doesn't make for good, I don't think so anyway, entertaining radio other than Chris Parker. I don't know. Maybe maybe it's just me and Mike Shope not seeing eye to eye, but Thomas, you really did strike a nerve and derail the show there. I love you. I love the fact that you guys show up and do this. Have a fire sale. Sign Crosby and Waddle. Draft the rest. Trade for Crosby. Trade for Waddle. Draft the rest of the team. I'm not going to lie to you. That could be an approach. Sophie, we'll talk about that in the coming weeks. I just like that we laid out in perfect fashion all of the problems in front of the Bills so that you guys can better understand that this isn't easy. It's not going to go well. Brandon Beane is going to have to work really hard to hit a home run on every single one of these fronts. But at least he's out there. And at least he understands it. At least out of all the GMs in the NFL, he's probably the most tenured now. When you look at the guys who got fired, Chris, we ran the numbers. He's one of the most tenured Super Bowls. Whiskey. He's one of the most tenured GMs to never make a Super Bowl. He's got to change that, and I think he knows it. So with that in mind, it's time. It's time for him to really have a bold offseason where he remakes this team in a way that gets them over the hump and feeds into this new, young, dynamic coaching staff that they're hoping can be the breath of fresh air that this franchise needs and can get them through those high-pressure moments where we normally implode.
Thomas said that I guess Shope wanted to watch curling in Mississauga unless the Bills got a new coach. And that was the day they hired Brady. So Shope couldn't watch curling in Mississauga.
I like this. Ruffles and Senior. I used to listen to Shope driving through Rochester when he was working. Totally chilled Mensa Pretender. Mensa Pretender is a thing. I'm going to start calling people, and I'm just going to see if they get that it's an insult. Totally changed when he got to Buffalo and worked with Coach Dickerson. Exactly. And now, Ruffles and Senior, you just aged yourself because you remember the coach. You remember the coach. I was a child driving around in my dad's truck listening to the coach, Chuck Dickerson.
Yeah, you were driving in the back of the truck, not the cab. You weren't allowed in the cab. You drove in the back of the truck on your way to work.
I like this. I wanted to criticize Mike Shope until I found out his mom is in the bullpen chat on YouTube. Watch what you say there, brother. His mom. Guys, I've offended everybody's mom, including Chris's and my own. They all watch this show. In fact, they were the first supporters of us. They're the only reason we ever had the confidence to get off the ground. We were like, hey, we have 10 downloads. It was just our moms on like 3 different machines. Guys, I love this. I love that we got a chance to lay out that Chris looks just like Dan fucking Aykroyd. Dude, you gotta do something. Start skating harder. Your face is getting puffy.
I'm getting old is what that is.
Meanwhile, I'm over here wearing shoulder pads. Sucks for all of us, brother. Guys, thank you so much for showing up here for our show tonight. But we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. This has been your Rockpile Report.